All right, people are populating into the webinar, so we're going to just wait until a little bit more people join us here, but I just want to say a real quick welcome. Get yourself settled in and we'll get started in just a little bit. I hope wherever you are Zooming in from, you're having a lovely day and having a good day. So it'll be even a better day after the webinar today. Oh, hi, Heidi. Great to have you here. We're going to wait just another moment or two. We'll get started. I know we have a lot to talk about today, so we want to try to stay on time as much as possible.
This is going to be a good one. Look excited.
I'm looking forward to it.
Hey, we got Tamala from Churchill Healthcare.
Ah, hi, Tamala.
Right.
Terrific. All right. Well,
where's Heidi from, Julie? Where's Heidi from?
Heidi is one of our colleagues at AGE-u-cate and does a little bit of marketing and sales for us. So, and she's from Canada. So,
whoa, hey, we got a Hoosier. We got a Hoosier, Melanie Perry from ASC Communities in Indianapolis. One of my haunting grounds there in Indiana. So great to have everybody here on the chat. Yeah,
it's fun to see it. Comments come in. So it is my honor to welcome you all today to this AGE-u-cate Training Institute May virtual road trip, Gentle Leadership During Times of Trauma. My name is Julie Boges, and I'm the Director of Grants and Consulting Projects with AGE-u-cate, and I'm also a certified master trainer. So the format today is going to be a good old-fashioned conversation about self-care, resiliency, empathy, and emotional leadership. So sit back and grab your favorite beverage, relax and enjoy the conversation. You don't even have to find the mental energy to pay attention to a PowerPoint. And you don't even have to take notes because this webinar is being recorded. Beck and I also want to say that we welcome your comments in the chat feature, and I'm glad to see that many of you are already availing yourself of the chat because this is intended to be a conversation, and we will be sure to refer to your comments as we go along the way. So as I mentioned earlier, I am with AGE-u-cate Training Institute, and I'd like to tell you just a little bit about AGE-u-cate. We are igniting change in the aging services industry with effective and by developing and delivering effective caregiver training to improve the well-being of older adults. And we have several programs, two of our flagship programs that I'll mention right now. First one is Dementia Live, and that is a simulation experience for learners of what it might be like to live with dementia. And we also have Compassionate Touch, and that is a technique that we teach to caregivers who are working with older adults how to introduce, or I should say reintroduce, expressive touch into the care of older adults. And the third program I want to mention to you, which is one of our newest programs, is called Reveal Aging. And it is a device-enabled quality of life, quality of care, educational program for people working with older adults that is delivered in a micro content environment. And next week, I'm going to mention this at the beginning and at the end of this webinar, but next week, which I believe is the 27th, let me double check my notes on that. We are going to be hosting a 30-minute demonstration of Reveal Aging at 1 p.m. And it'll be just 30 minutes and you can pop in and just take a look at some of the courses that we have and get a little snippet. And we are going to be giving away free subscriptions of our training programs. So I'll mention that again at the end, just in case I happen to get that date wrong, but I didn't. It is Thursday, May 27th. All right, so let us continue here. I am so thrilled and honored to welcome Mike Logan to this virtual road trip. And Mike's career includes leadership positions in senior housing and healthcare dating back to 1999. He has a master's degree in health administration from St. Louis University and a weatherhead coaching certificate from Case Western Reserve University, and a certificate in board education from BoardSource, and a certificate in fundraising management from Indiana University Lilly Family School of Philanthropy. So Mike, I welcome you and invite you to make any welcoming or introductory comments that you would like to share with the group today.
Thank you, Julie. You know, Julie, you and I, we go way back. We've been colleagues. We've been friends. When you called to ask about an opportunity to share what I've been learning about with gentle leadership, I couldn't say no to you. And this is just such a great opportunity for me to be here. I really hope that this is a time for shared dialogue, shared experiences. I love seeing the information on the chat box. If we can get more of the chat box and more of that dialogue, that will help with the conversation. But I really hope that we can do a couple things, that we can gain a little bit of insight into a term called the positive emotional attractor, PEA, learn about gentle leadership, and also some key takeaways of follow through on what we can do going forward as leaders.
Yeah, good. Well, I have to back at you, Mike, because I have to share with you that when our founder and president, Pam Brandon, landed on this as a topic, she said, Julie, do you know anybody? I said, I most certainly do. So I was thrilled, just as you were, to have you accept our invitation to participate today. So I'm really excited to learn from you. And I want to begin by saying, you know, Mike, we first met in 2006, and you were an administrator for Franciscan Communities and managed University Place, and that was affiliated with Purdue University. And at the time, we were in similar positions. I was about 3 years into my CEO position for a community in Chicago. And I remember when I met you thinking that you were somebody that I could learn a lot from. So it's no surprise to me that you are now the CEO for a non-for-profit organization, Michigan Masonic Homes. So I just want to begin with asking you, how are you? And how are you holding up during these times of COVID and this pandemic?
Well,
you be honest.
It's been one where if I'm in a particular mood, I've said I'm happy on the outside and rotting on the inside, because it's been what we as leaders have had to do. We've had to go out there, we've had to be strong, we've had to be calm, but at the same time, I've had to use this tissue box a couple too many times.
Yeah.
It's been a time of losing residents, friends, staff members that have decided to call it quits. But you know, I'm hanging in there. I'm grateful for this opportunity to serve. You know, these are opportunities that we need to take as leaders and learn from them and grow. And I know it's hard. It's hard when you have to do sit-ups and pull-ups and push-ups too. It's the same thing in leadership. When you go through these tough times, you're going to grow as a leader. Stay committed, have perseverance. So for me, it's all about gratitude. I've been talking about gratitude for the past year and a half, knowing that if I wake up in the morning with gratitude and I go to bed at night with gratitude, my outlook on life is going to change. So focusing on gratitude. And I've also been really focused on learning what I learned at Case Western Reserve with coaching, intentional development theory. It's called the positive emotional attractor. And just make sure that what the majority of your time, when you're a leader, you're thinking about the positive aspects of what can come out of a decision, the positive aspects of what just occurred, and the positive aspects of the conversation that you have with your team, always trying to stay on the positive. So for me, I've been grateful. It's been an honor to serve during this time. I can't believe I'm doing it. I can't believe I'm doing it. I mean, I can't believe it. March of 2020, I was told by a colleague, hey, this is just a blip. It's going to be the worst 30 days of your life. But after that, smooth sailing. Well,
wow, yeah. We talk about that a lot too at AGE-u-cate. And I think many of us working in this industry thought, yeah, 30 days, 45 days, we'll get back to on-site training,
right.
Life will get back to normal. And here we are well over a year. And things are better, but this industry has been left ravaged after this pandemic. And we'll get to that in just a minute. But it's interesting to hear you describe yourself. And it's been very interesting to me to watch your career and to watch the things that you put on LinkedIn particularly. And I've enjoyed reading the kinds of messages that you put out there. And you describe yourself as a joyful leader, a culture creator, and a coach.
Right.
And can you share your growth journey with us?
Absolutely. You know, I used to think the journey was about the vocation. I thought it was about the job. I thought the journey was how I was going to become an assistant administrator and then how I could become an executive director. That was the journey. But that is not the journey. The journey is how we change and how we grow. And my journey started out where I had a pretty large ego. I had quite a bit of excitement. I was an emotional leader. And my journey over the past 20 years has changed dramatically because of the pandemic. The pandemic really put me down a couple notches. I thought I had it all planned out. I thought I had all the answers. And when the pandemic hit, I didn't have any answers. And I was scared. And I had to think about what was important to me. And part of that journey was maintaining my joy. I've had times where I've had a boss who stole my joy away from me. I've had a job that stole my joy away from me. And what it did to me was that it seriously affected my mental state and it affected my physical state of being. I didn't have the joy. And Franciscan communities, they do a great job about this with joy, because joy is intrinsic. And it's something that you need to protect at all costs. And joyful is not being necessarily gregarious. It's not necessarily being, boisterous and just so happy. It's having a sense of strength, of joy, of what you're doing every day, and a belief that what you're doing every day matters and that you're not in control, that you have a higher power that is in control. So the past year, because of the pandemic, I have really changed as a leader. I've kept some of my same old tricks, but I am more joyful in the sense of knowing that things are going to be okay. I enjoy what I do every day. I'm making a difference every day. When we think about culture creator, there's no doubt culture starts at the top. Culture eats strategy for lunch as well. You can have the biggest strategy, but if your culture doesn't help, you're doomed. And so who helps create culture? Well, it starts with the leader, and it starts with the leadership team and the management team. And through that, that's where you could start part of the culture. And for me, it's been a culture of transparency. It's been a culture of over communication. And these are all values that I had throughout my whole career. But the importance of over communicating, the importance of transparency, and in a culture of can do, staying in a positive emotional attractor state, staying in the zone is so important during this time for you and your teams. And then also coaching. And coaching goes both ways. Here at Michigan Masonic Homes, we do kind of three things. I've hired a professional PhD coach that, frankly, I've needed my CFO to have some coaching. I've needed to have my new administrator, healthcare administrator, have some coaching. I've needed the director of nursing to have some coaching. So we've hired a professional to help on that end. But then for me, I then work with my counterparts on coaching them up about situations, how to frame a situation, how to respond to a situation. And then after an event occurs, huddling up and dissecting that event to make sure was that what we wanted from the conversation that we had with our team members or not. So it's a constant coaching, it's a constant feedback loop. So it's important for me through my journey that I thought it was one of vocational journey and where I've worked and what I've done. And what I've learned is I got my butt kicked. I got my butt kicked with the pandemic, and I've had to really understand what does a journey mean for Mike and what's Mike learning from this and what does Mike protect and what does Mike need to let go of and where does Mike need to grow. So
that's interesting. The let go of. I think. Can you comment on that, because you only have so much mental energy to deal with things. So, and you also, I wanted to go back to something you said too, is that you described yourself as an emotional leader, and if you can maybe describe that a little bit for us, what that means to you.
Part of gentle leadership, and this is where I've been learning about gentle leadership and about growth, is when you're an emotional leader, I mean, everything's heightened up. You got a great survey, you're in compliance. You got 5 new leads for move-ins. You've got 3 new move-ins coming in this week, or you've got 3 new CNAs. Lord willing, we get staff that show up to work, that come to work, and so it's kind of this up and down, but being very passionate about what I do. But gentle leadership is that consistency and it's that calmness. And so it's been a good countermeasure for me to make sure that I'm not always so hyped up, so excited. I can be excited, but I'm not so down. It's the leveling off. That's what I'm learning about with gentle leadership. For emotional leaders, it's your highs and your lows, State's in the building. Well, now I'm low. Or state left the building and we're in compliance. Well, then I'm high, I'm good. And it's this highs and lows. And gentle leadership revolves around the central core function of stillness, of calmness.
Steadiness.
Steady as she goes. And again, what I've learned and as I've grown and people that know me, we've got somebody in the audience here, Dawn. She knows me when I was a whippersnapper asking these questions during executive team meetings at the corporate office. The pandemic has really forced me to mature really quickly in regards to a gentle leadership style. I used to think it was they didn't care, or they've lost their luster as leaders because there's no passion. But you can have passion as a gentle leader. But most of the time, what people do want and what people do crave is consistency and calmness.
Yes.
So gentle leadership revolves around that.
Mm-hmm. You know, I can remember distinctly in, my previous lives where, you have that boss where when it's a good day, it's a good day, and it's a good day. And, you can expect a certain person. But then when it's a bad day, it's horrid. It's like when she's good, it's very, very good. But when she was bad, she was horrid, And so really feeling that longing for having that consistency so that I walk in to my work every day and I know that Mike is going to be the rock. He's going to be the steady rock that we can lean on and anticipate what to expect. And so I'm just going to ask you this question simply because this whole last year, I would imagine just about every single day that you showed up to work was bad news to some extent. It was you don't have enough staff, or you just had 5 new COVID positive tests, or you don't have any more PPE, or we don't have enough money in the bank to cover payroll, those kinds of things. How did you manage those consistent low days in this pandemic with gentle leadership?
So gentle leadership, a core foundation of gentle leadership from a spiritual context, is having a personal relationship with a higher being. In the Masonic tradition, we call the higher being the great architect of the universe. Because in the Masonic tradition, we don't want brothers to get in debates over religion. We don't talk two things in the Masonic tradition. When you're a Freemason, you don't talk about politics and you don't talk about religion to your brother, because that divides people. But in gentle leadership, you have to have a relationship with a higher power to give you the strength every day to get it through. I was one that I've always been a faith-based believer. I wanted to become a Lutheran pastor at age 14. I was confirmation camp counselor. I was in the scene, and wanting to become a pastor, but it didn't work out. It floundered. But I've always been a faith-based leader. But I've always used it just when I had to, or when I wanted it, or when I needed it. Gentle leadership, not only is it being consistent in how you view the world and how you respond to the world, but it's being connected to a higher self, a higher being. And so daily devotions, daily meditations to take away fear. We have so much fear. It's the state, it's the reimbursement, it's corporate wants me to do this new thing, and now that's just another thing that I got to do. It's the budget that's going to happen, and is that going to get passed? It's our financial reports, it's our sense that there's so much fear.
Yeah.
And gentle leadership, one of the primary components is contribution. You're contributing on a daily basis to ensure that you maintain compassion, consistency, and calmness in your daily response. But the only way you can do that is have a relationship with a higher being. And doing your devotion, and doing your meditation, and praying. And that's another thing that I really have changed in my life. I used to just pray for myself. You know, Lord, help the census. I mean, and I talk about the job. It's two things. Lord, we need staff, and Lord, we need census. You know,
Mhm.
I don't pray that way anymore, because what I've learned through gentle leadership is that you pray for others. You could pray for wisdom, but you're praying for others. Because guess what? You're not alone. Even though
Yeah.
executive directors, administrators, nobody gets the job. Nobody understands it. I mean, it's a 24/7, there's pressure. I mean,
Mhm.
I'll have a hard time understanding what we do for a living. So it's important to go back to pray for others, because you're not alone.
Mhm.
And other people that are going to lift you up. It's your team members that are going to lift you up. You're not alone. But pray for them. And you know this, Julie, for part about me. You know, part of why I'm so intrigued about gentle leadership, it's because of the spirituality context of it.
Mhm.
Because I've needed to hold on to something to get me from stop whipping around constantly with what CDC is doing, what CMS doing, what's Department of Health doing. I've had to have that relationship. So gentle leadership is thinking about praying for others, having a relationship with a higher being in order to you to maintain a sense of calmness, consistency, compassion, seeing people as people.
Mm. Talk
Uh,
about that. That I see that up here on your notes. People as people. So what does that mean?
well, before I studied and learned about gentle leadership, and prior to the pandemic, I'd see people, but I would see them as, you know, the night nurse who's a charge nurse. You know, she's very important because she's the RN on the night shift. I've got to meet her. I got to talk to her. But my interest in her was because she was the night shift RN nurse, and we had one, and we can't lose her, and we got to have coverage. And so here I am thinking about it, an object. I'm treating her as an object, as a thing, as a night nurse RN charge nurse. And I'm not seeing this individual as a person that is working nights in order to take care of her family during the day, while her husband or her partner works during the day, and at the same time has aspirations to going back to school to get her RN. I mean, to get a BSN, from being an RN to a BSN. And seeing people as people and not objects. They have feelings, they have needs, they have desires, they have fears. I mean, they're working here too. They're working here with us too. And they have fears. And that's why it's been so important that you over communicate as a gentle leader. You over communicate, because people have so many fears. And when people really annoy you and really get on your nerves, it's hard to not look at them as an object, as a barrier. So there's ways in gentle leadership that you go about trying to help that person. And an example of that, if a person poses a barrier, you have to work on the relationship.
Mm.
Because gentle leadership is all about relationships as well. It's about working the relationship. And if if you first work on the relationship with the person that you think is a barrier or is a barrier, then you need to work on matrix reporting relationships that maybe have influence on that person. Work on
Interesting.
that relationship. So it's called the influence pyramid. And it's something that we study here at Michigan Masonic Home, but it's having an outward mindset, not inward, not me. What can I get from this person? It's what can I do for this person?
Servant leadership. What you
Right.
talk about
Right.
sounds very servant leadership focused. You're there to serve others versus the other way around.
Well, it's true. And there was Melanie here, Melanie Perry from American Senior Communities wrote a great chat in our chat box, and please welcome to put in the chat. Great reminder to work on relationships rather than just giving up on them. I mean, I want to give up on some people. You just want to give up on, but the thing is, if you give up on people, you're going to have no people.
That's right.
So you need to work on the relationship. It forces you to work on the relationship.
And I got to say that I'm maybe going a little off script here for a moment, but what you talk about with really connecting with the human being, with the person, and not looking at your workforce or your leadership team as just a person who's going to do something, who's going to complete a task, who's going to manage the night shift, is really person-centered care. And that's what we try to teach our staff about person-centered care, working with residents, is not to see them as just a task or somebody that you need to bathe or take to an activity or sit down at a meal, but there's a human being behind that task. And it's a very similar approach, it sounds like, to gentle leadership, which is that connecting with the person first. Would you say that's true? That in order to have truly a person-centered culture, that for resident care, you need to have a person-centered culture for your employees?
You do. And that can be tough at times. We've worked on that with our staff about seeing people as people, and not objects. And we work on that consistently. I think part of that general leadership also is having compassion for the staff that are providing the compassion for the residents. Here was an example that I had that I recently had, and I came away and I got a little bit of inward, but I understood what her reaction was. We have a union steward because we have a union in our building. We have the Teamsters. They've been here for about 25 years. And I heard through the grapevine that the night CNA who works on the night shift, her husband passed away in an accident. I was in a meeting and I could have done one or two things. I could have stayed in the meeting when I saw her. Let me just rephrase this. I was in a meeting, and while I'm in the meeting, I see through the window a CNA who works the night shift that I just found out that she lost her husband to an accident. Now, as a leader, I had two choices. My first choice was just to stay in the conference room for a little bit, just stay in the conference room and say, well, next time when I see her, I'll give my sympathy but knowing that she's night shift and knowing that I'm probably not going to see her anytime soon, I excused myself from that architect meeting. And I went out and I expressed my sympathy for the loss of her husband. And she said, I really don't want to talk about that right now. I'm just here to pick up some paperwork. And I said, understand, just let you know that I'm thinking about you. And at first I thought, oh, geez, she didn't care that I got out of my meeting and went out of my way to say, I'm sorry for your loss. Well, that lasted about a microsecond in my head, because seeing people as people, yeah, it's pretty hard to lose a spouse. I can only imagine. I lost my father last year at 69. So I can imagine losing your spouse. And I'm just glad that I did it. I'm glad I went out, because that's walking the walk and talking the talk. When that was pure compassion that came out of me when I saw that individual. And I know she recognized it, because I did see her recently, and we didn't talk about it, but I did see her and we had a good conversation.
And I imagine that it meant more to her than what you think it did. And I also imagine she probably told many of her coworkers, you know what Mike did? That was really nice, so, those small gestures are so impactful. And I think sometimes leaders in a position like yours think that they don't have time to do that, that the thought of leaving an architect meeting is like, they simply can't take the time to do these things. But it leads me to think about a comment that we heard recently from actually an association executive, who said, one of the things that we're very concerned about is that during this last year, when there was so much celebration going on of, the heroes, the frontline workers, they were getting lunch, and family members were writing cards and notes of thanks and delivering, meals and cookie baskets and signs out front, and all of this to celebrate and thank the hard work of the frontline workers. And that probably to a certain degree helped to sustain these workers during this incredibly difficult time and challenging time. But the fear is that we're going to stop doing that when things go back to normal. And what do we need to do moving forward, Mike, so that energy, so that leaders understand this is a must? This is not a choice anymore with leadership. We all must adopt this kind of thought process about lifting up and being in relationship with the workforce. That really is the number one thing we must do. What do you have to say about that?
It takes the most time. It can be the most draining. But you have to be accessible. You have to be transparent. You have to overly communicate. People are hurting, and people are struggling, and we're all kind of trying to navigate this COVID-19. But I think as leaders, we kind of have to do, I think, two things. I think one, we need to focus on the basics and focus on encouragement instead of going around doing your rounds and noticing all the bad things. Notice the bad things that need to get fixed, things that are chipped. I mean, we all need to do that. But try to at least engage with the staff on a surface level, but also try to engage with them on a more compassionate level. It's just going to be very hard. And I think we cannot take staff or residents for granted. Phone calls aren't ringing off the hook with amazing referrals. But we can't take it for granted. We have to keep our eyes on the staff and the residents, We have to call them back and as quickly as possible within 24 hours or the end of the business day. But we also, as general leaders, need to become more involved in the legislative actions of our job. You know, there's some individuals that do a great job of getting their state rep and getting them in their community. I mean, it is, but we've got to become advocates. And that's not an advocate for just patient rights, an advocate for the residents. It's for us, and with reimbursement and with what we need from the state and federal government to keep skilled nursing facilities operating. So I know it's gonna, it's gonna lead back, but I believe in all my heart, everybody that's on this webinar, they know how important their staff is. And making sure we don't take advantage of our staff. Yeah. But again, that kind of leads me to this whole thing about what the pandemic has taught me. It's taught me that probably the most important lesson that I needed to learn as a leader is perseverance and trust in God, my higher being, that I'm not in control. Those have been two huge learning objectives for me throughout this time of the pandemic. Perseverance, not giving up, not looking at the job boards every week, not looking at how do I get out of skilled nursing, not giving up on managing of people. I'm not giving up, and none of these people in this webinar are giving up. But we're going to have to take care of ourselves, and that's why self-care is so important.
I'll jump in here and just share that, you and I were supposed to get together on Friday and just kind of talk about some of the talking points with this. And you sent me an email and said, I need a mental health day. We'll get together early next week. I thought, yeah, that's amazing. Good for you. I said, good for you. I said to myself that he's a leader that recognizes when he needs to refill his tank. And there are so many leaders that don't understand that. They don't understand that self-care is so important. So do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I do. And I've been pushed with self-care. Over the past year and a half, I've been seeing a therapist. I've been seeing a licensed clinical social worker a couple times a month. Mental health is very important. And we have very complex jobs, whether it's reimbursement, regulations, families, staff. And what through my counseling, I've been able to have better self-care. I meditate during the day. I know I have an executive assistant that's right next door. She knows at 12 o'clock, from 12 to 12:30, I'm doing two things. I'm either meditating, I'm either doing a prayer of a devotion, or I'm playing my guitar. and I'm trying to learn a song to sing with the residents. So I'm either doing one of those things, and I'm doing it every day because I need to have that break during the day.
Yeah.
It's so important that we think about ourselves and think about what we're reading. Think about what we're listening to, because again, part of general leadership and part of intentional development theory is staying in this positive attractor positive emotional attractor state. And with that, you need time to decompress. You need time to give thanks, think about gratitude. You need time to just let everything go for the day. And so I've built that in my schedule. I call it focus time. So I've got two little zones. One is a half hour, one is 15 minutes of focus time, so that I'm right for what's going to happen if we got a big leadership meeting or things like that. But self-care, we cannot underestimate self-care. And you have to, I mean, I've gained the COVID 40. I've gained the COVID 40, you know, and I'm trying to get rid of it. And thank God for my spouse. We've been married 20 years in July, 20 years.
Congratulations.
Oh, I'm thankful she's still sticking around. I mean, I've been a wreck, you know, half the time of the 20 years, but you know, we're doing the job that we do, but it's having an accountability partner that I'm not being the pantry pirate, going and eating all the crackers at night before I go to bed, or making sure I go for a walk, and then having an accountability partner with my counselor about meditation and prayer during the day. I need it.
Well, I want to acknowledge that I think, and I don't want to sound, men versus women here, but I think for men to admit that they need the focus time, that they need that accountability partner, that they need those mental health days, that it's okay to cry. One of the first things you told us is you picked up a box of tissues and said, yeah, I've had my moments. I think women tend to be, women tend to be a little bit better at that self-care, kind of thing. And, but I give you just as much credit as I can push your way to say, good for you, congratulations. You're a real person. And I feel like your staff probably know who you are, and they know Mike. They know Mike the person. They just don't know Mike the CEO.
Right.
And that's a vulnerable thing.
I mean, I remember when I first started, and I was an assistant administrator. I'm in my mid-20s, upper 20s, thinking, who cries? It's like, I haven't cried in years, and I thought that was really cool. Walking around, I haven't cried in years. And I only got these Kleenexes because when staff come in my office, here's a Kleenex. And oh my God, I have cried so much this past year.
Oh.
I mean, I cry and it feels good. And I do it. I don't cry in front of the team. I may cry when I'm calling my mom and talking on the phone when I'm in the car, or my wife. But it's been an emotional time.
Yeah.
We've gone through trauma.
Yes. Yeah.
We've gone through a traumatic event. We need to stay vigilant and persevere through this time. Don't give up on this crazy business of senior services. I mean, don't give up on it. Don't go apply for that job as the executive director for the YMCA. I know it sounds better and it sounds like it'd be easier, but you know what? Don't give up. Persevere. You're growing. You're learning. Enter into a mindset of seeing people as people. Discover the wonders of gentle leadership. Take care of yourself. Have an accountability partner. We're in recovery mode. Your questions, Julie, is what's next when all this fanfare goes away? Well, most of it's gone away.
Yeah.
And we're in recovery mode now. And so we need to heal. We need to heal spirits. We need to heal people's emotions.
Yeah.
I know we only have a couple minutes here, but could I share one thing about gentle leadership before we ask questions?
Yeah, and I also want to hear what you have to say about wise as a serpent and gentle as a dove.
Oh, well,
That,
again, one of the one of the one of the aspects of gentle leadership is not that you're just step on me, I'm easy, just I'm not. No, it's consistency, okay? But it's to be as wise as a serpent and gentle as a dove. Know your data, know your information, talk to others before you make a snap judgment. But in your investigation process, be as gentle as possible. So have the information, but the way that you go about explaining it and communicating it, just be gentle as a dove.
okay.
And I think that's just what I wanted to say. But there was one other thing that I wanted to tell people. When you do your contemplative prayer, when you're doing your meditation, everybody talks about the serenity prayer. And the serenity prayer goes like this: God grant me the serenity, because I've had to say this many times. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. But that's not the full prayer. The full prayer is, this is where gentle leadership stems from. Living one day at a time, enjoying one moment at a time. When they talk about recovery, they talk about living moment to moment, day by day, hour by hour. You're recovering. We are recovering from a traumatic experience. Accepting hardships as the pathway to peace. Trusting that He will make things all right if I surrender to God's will, so that I may be reasonably happy in this life, forever and ever in the next. So that I may be reasonably happy. The prayer doesn't talk about all your worries are going to go away, things are going to be fantastic, things are easy. It's really having the courage to change the things that you can, the wisdom to know the difference, living day by day, moment by moment, and be reasonably happy.
And releasing control over things that you cannot control.
Which we can't control that surveyor. We can't,
No.
I try to, at times, but it doesn't work out. We can't control what CMS is doing. We can't control that crazy family member. But it's gentle leadership is very important now, because we are entering a stage in our field of recovery. And I'm not saying occupancy bounce back and everything's going to, I'm talking healing, emotional recovery.
Yes.
Because of what we've been going through, and it's lonely. And if there's anything I can do to help another person by being an ear, like to give my contact information and help people out to get through this time, because nobody has the types of jobs that we have running an operation, a community of people.
Yes.
And everything that goes with it.
And we talked earlier, we mentioned that it's lonely at the top. When you're at the top of an organizational chart, you have to dig deep inside yourself to find the strength and the endurance and the perseverance that you need to be able to sustain your team. You have to be the rock for them. And that is not easy. And this job is difficult under normal circumstances. This pandemic has blown things out of the water for people. And sadly, I've heard, my share of people that say, there's no way I could deal with this again. And that's certainly understandable. And I don't cast judgment on people who have come to that conclusion. But you've really offered some very wise and sage words for leaders who are trying to make their way every day through this incredibly difficult time. And I want to thank you for everything that you've so transparently shared with us today. And I'm also grateful that you're willing to share your contact information, because I would imagine there may be some people who would just love to have a chat with you over coffee or something on Zoom. So
we need each other. We need each other.
Ooh, we do. Oh my gosh. Yes. That's kind of the name of the game right now, is being able to, people who are going through the similar thing that you are, it's very powerful to have that support. So we have about 2-3 more minutes, and I'm just taking a look here. Thanks, Mike. Taking a look here. There's, thank you for openly and transparently sharing with us today your messages and inspiration. Just wondering if there's any comments or questions that anybody might have while we have just another couple moments here.
I
did. Yeah, go ahead, Mike.
Say, if anybody is looking for great books, Max Lucado, Anxious for Nothing, great book. And then Craig Groeschel, who just came out with a new book called Winning the War in Your Mind. Change your thinking, change your life. So Max Lucado, Anxious for Nothing, and Craig Groeschel, Winning the War in Your Mind. And they're both on Amazon. And those are some books about mindset.
Yeah.
And then Google some gentle leadership practices. Great.
Mike, thanks so much. It's been great to reconnect with you, and certainly keep in touch, as we continue to move through this COVID recovery phase. And it's on that note that I would like to just let you all know that, as I mentioned at the beginning of the webinar, next Thursday, the 27th at 1 o'clock, we are going to highlight and present to you our new product called Reveal Aging. It's just a 30-minute webinar, kind of an infomercial for a new product that we have created at AGE-u-cate. One of the things that we did in the pandemic was kind of sat back and said, how can we be a resource and a help as we move into this COVID recovery phase of life here in this industry? And we have developed a training curriculum that is device enabled, and it focuses on quality of life training for aging services workers. So we're not talking about the clinical things, we're talking about how do we promote wellness, how do we promote well-being and independence and deal with caregiver stress, and what is aging. So we're going to do a little demo of that next week, and we will also be giving away some free subscriptions to these device-enabled training programs, training courses. And the reason that I mention this is because one of the things that we know moving forward is that we have to invest in our workers. We have to invest in them personally through leadership. They have to believe that you genuinely care about them as individuals and human beings, and they have to be invested in terms of their own personal development and growth. And that's what these programs are designed to do. These training courses are to help you as a provider invest in your employees. We know that retention is the name of the game right now. We've got to hold on to these workers as much as possible. So join us next week. We'd love to see you there at 1 o'clock, and an email will go out to all of you about that as well. And then our next virtual road trip will be June 16th with Dr. Linda Cristobal. She's a healthcare executive. She has got an extraordinary background, and she's currently the administrator of a hospital-based skilled nursing facility in Hudson County, New Jersey. And her topic is strategies for organizational stewardship. So I think this could very much be kind of a part two to really what Mike has laid the groundwork here on a leadership series. I'm looking forward to hearing her talk on that. So anyway, Mike's contact is in the chat here. So we'll leave the webinar open for just a moment so y'all can write down his information. But again, Mike, just thanks to you. It's been just delightful, and so thrilled that you were available today to share with us. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Julie. Thank you, everybody. Take care.
All right. Bye, everyone.
Bye.